I canceled my daughter's New York trip with their father and them to work on my second marriage work, which they are not invited to, and then let my new husband punish them for being ungrateful. Now I'm regretting my actions. I didn't invite my daughters to my second marriage, but forced them to chime in for work, but my entitled daughters planned to go on a New York vacation with their father. I canceled it and let my new husband punish my ungrateful daughters. Now they have abandoned me, and I'm regretting my actions. I'm getting married in a few months. This is my second marriage. I have two daughters from my previous one, 16 and 14. They live with me full-time. Their dad and I split years ago. There was no big dramatic ending, but it also wasn't amicable. We just stopped working and I took on most of the day-to-day parenting afterwards. That's still the case. My fiancé has a good relationship with my girls. He doesn't try to replace their dad and never has. He shows up, helps when asked. The girls like him. The wedding itself is going to be child-free. That wasn't a last-minute decision. It's a small venue with limited space. And honestly, we want one night that's quiet and adult. My daughters understand this. They're not upset about not attending the ceremony or reception. That part has never been the issue. What mattered to me was having them around in the weeks leading up to it because this is a big transition for our family. I wanted normal evenings together, dinners, conversations, and some sense of continuity. I didn't think that was unreasonable. A few weeks ago, my ex reached out and said he was planning a trip to New York City with the girls. He framed it as a surprise for them. A big experience. I didn't immediately say no. I asked when he was thinking of going. He said the week of my wedding. I told him that wasn't going to work. Not because of the city or the trip itself, but because of the timing. I said they could go literally any other week. Summer break is wide open. Long weekends exist. School schedules aren't that restrictive. That specific week was the problem. He didn't agree. He told me it was the only time he could get off work and that he'd already paid for everything. He also mentioned that the girls were excited about the trip. I told him again that I wasn't saying no to the trip, just the timing. I said I wanted the girls with me that week. He said I was making my wedding more important than their relationship with him. That's where the conversation ended. He told the girls anyway. They came home that evening excited, talking over each other, already planning what they wanted to see. I asked them who told them about the trip. They said their dad. I asked when it was. They told me. I said we needed to talk. I explained that I wasn't okay with them being gone that week. I didn't guilt them about my feelings. I said this was important to me and that I wanted them here. I also said they could go another time. My 16-year-old immediately shut down. She said I was being unfair. She said it was just a wedding and that people get married all the time. She said I was choosing my fiancé over them. That wasn't a new accusation. It's come up before, usually after a conversation with their dad. My 14-year-old didn't say much at first. She just watched. Later that night, she told me that she didn't understand why I couldn't just let this go. I told them that sometimes adults need support too. I didn't elaborate beyond that. The next day, my 16-year-old stopped talking to me entirely. She stayed in her room. My 14-year-old followed her lead, not as intensely, but enough that the shift was obvious. I didn't push it. I gave them space. A couple of days later, my ex texted me and said I was putting them in the middle and that I needed to reconsider before I damaged my relationship with them. He said they were old enough to decide what they wanted and that I was being controlling. I didn't respond right away. I talked to my sister about it. She said she understood why I wanted them there, but also said that teenagers don't think long-term and that I should probably let it go to keep the peace. A friend of mine was more blunt and said it sounded selfish to expect them to skip a trip for my wedding when they weren't even invited. From my perspective, I'm not asking them to skip something once in a lifetime. I'm asking them not to leave the week their mother is getting married. I'm asking for presence, not participation. From their perspective, it probably looks like I'm saying no to something exciting because it doesn't suit me. I don't know where the line is between holding a boundary and digging my heels in. At this point, my 16-year-old is still barely speaking to me. My 14-year-old is polite, but distant. My ex has made it clear he thinks I'm in the wrong and has told other people his version of the story. I haven't changed my answer yet, but I'm not feeling confident about it either. After a few days of the tension at home, I tried to talk to the girls again separately this time. I didn't want them feeding off each other or feeling like they needed to present a united front. I started with my 14-year-old because she's usually more open. I asked her what she was actually upset about. Not the trip itself, but what this represented to her. She said it felt like I was saying no just because. She said it felt like I cared more about appearances and schedules than about what they wanted. She also said their dad told them that if they didn't go now, the trip probably wouldn't happen at all. I told her that wasn't true and that if her dad was serious about taking them, another week wouldn't change that. I also told her that this wasn't about punishment. It was about timing and priorities. She listened, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. She wasn't angry, just resigned, like she'd already picked a side to keep things simple. My conversation with my 16-year-old went worse. She didn't want to talk at first. When she did, she accused me of trying to make everything about myself. She said I was always asking them to understand and be patient while their dad was the one who actually did fun things with them. She said she didn't see why my wedding meant they had to put their lives on hold. I told her I wasn't asking for weeks or months. I was asking for one specific week. I told her that I show up for them every day in ways that don't come with tickets or trips attached and that it hurt to be treated like an obstacle instead of a parent. She told me that maybe if I didn't make such a big deal out of things, people wouldn't push back. That ended the conversation. Since then, I've been walking around my own house feeling like a guest. Meals are quiet. Doors are closed. If I bring up anything related to the wedding, it's met with silence or short answers. I've stopped trying to explain myself because every attempt turns into another reminder that I'm outnumbered. My ex, meanwhile, has doubled down. He sent another message saying the girls are old enough to remember this and that I should think carefully about what lesson I'm teaching them. He hasn't asked to revisit the timing. He hasn't offered alternatives. The expectation is that I give in. This is where the history matters. During our marriage, he made a lot of unilateral decisions and framed them as fates accomplished. Trips, purchases, plans with his family. I was expected to adjust. After the divorce, that didn't stop. It just shifted. If something overlapped with my time or plans, the assumption was that I'd figure it out because I always did. The difference now is that my daughters are old enough to understand the narrative he's presenting. He doesn't say outright that I'm unreasonable, but he doesn't correct that impression either. He lets them sit with the idea that I'm the one blocking something good. I've spent years trying not to involve them in adult disagreements. I don't vent about their dad to them. I don't counter-message every time he makes a comment. I focus on consistency, routines, being there. Apparently, that doesn't hold much weight when it's stacked against a New York trip. The child-free wedding part keeps coming up when people talk to me about this, and I think that's what's skewing opinions. On paper, it looks like I don't even want my kids there. So, why does it matter if they're gone? What gets missed is that not being invited to the ceremony doesn't mean they're excluded from the moment. They're still my kids. This is still a major change in our lives. I'm not asking them to help with centerpieces or dress fittings. I'm not expecting emotional speeches or bonding moments. I just didn't want them to be physically absent while everything shifts. At the same time, I'm aware that they're teenagers. They don't care about symbolic presence. They care about what's in front of them. And right now, that's a city they've only seen on TV. People in my life are split. Some say I'm allowed to want my children around for my wedding and that my ex is being deliberately difficult. Others say I should let them go, smile through it, and deal with my feelings later because they're at an age where resentment sticks. I haven't changed my answer yet. The trip hasn't been booked. As far as I know, my ex is waiting me out. The girls are waiting to see if I fold. I don't feel dramatic about this. I don't feel righteous. I just feel tired and unsure whether I'm protecting something important or creating a problem that didn't need to exist. So, that's where I am. Ada comments. Comment 1OD and I say that as someone who actually sympathizes with a tapas, I want my kids around during a big life event. Feeling but sympathy doesn't change the mechanics. Here you're calling it a boundary, but boundaries are about what you will do, not what other people must do to regulate your emotions. I will not allow them to go that week because I want them nearby isn't really a boundary. It's a veto, and teenagers respond badly to vetoes because it feels like control even if you're calm about it. And here's the part I don't think you want to admit. You're not just asking for presence. You want reassurance. You want them to signal through being physically in your house that week that they're on your side about the remarriage. That's why this is hitting you so hard, because if they go with dad, it feels like a vote against you. That's an adult interpretation, but you're projecting it onto a teen situation. Meanwhile, your daughters are seeing dad offers something rare and exciting. Mom says no because it conflicts with mom's wedding week. Also, mom's wedding is child-free, so they're not even part of it. Team Logic says she wants us around when it benefits her, but we're not included when it counts. Your ex is also obviously stirring the pot. Fine, but you're giving him easy ammo. You're the one saying you can go literally any other time when that may not be true for him. And even if it is true, it's not true for your daughters emotionally. An NYC trip at 1,614 feels huge. Another week feels imaginary. Let them go. Stop making the week of your wedding into a loyalty test. And for the love of God, find your support somewhere other than your teenagers. You're the parent. Act like it. Comment 2. Uda. I'm usually the loudest person in the room defending child-free weddings. Love them. Support them. No notes. But excluding your own teenage daughters. That's not child-free. That's just cold. They're 16 and 14. Not toddlers who will be melting down during vows. You didn't just say no, kids. You specifically told them this wedding isn't for them. And then you're shocked they don't want to hang around all week being emotionally available and supportive for an event they're not welcome at. From their point of view, it probably looks like this. Mom's wedding is adult only, so they're sidelined. But suddenly, Their presence is very important when it's convenient for her. Then when something actually fun comes up, something rare with their dad, you shut it down because you need them nearby. That's a whiplash message. You're too young to attend but old enough to show up for me. Pick one. Let them go on the trip and maybe sit with why you're comfortable getting married without them there, but not comfortable with them being elsewhere that same week. Comment 3. Uta. For two separate reasons, and together they make this worse. First, borrowing your own teenage children from your wedding. I don't care how trendy child-free weddings are. These aren't random cousins or someone's sticky-handed 5-year-old. These are your daughters, teenagers, old enough to understand what's happening and old enough to remember being excluded. Second, denying them a trip because they're supposed to support you and help during the week of a wedding they won't even attend. I'm genuinely confused about what that support is supposed to look like. Are they running errands, keeping you company, sitting around while you're busy with wedding stuff they're not part of? Because, yeah, from the outside it sounds like you want them to do the unglamorous emotional labor and then be sent away before the actual event. That's not bonding. That's treating them like background furniture. I'm all for child-free weddings, seriously. But your own kids at this age, that's a choice with consequences. And one of those consequences is that they don't center your wedding the way you want them to. Stop framing this like they're abandoning you. They're teenagers being told they're too young to attend their mom's wedding but too important to leave town. Of course they're pissed and honestly they have every right to be. Update: after I posted I didn't immediately change my stance. I read everything. The comments calling me selfish, cold, short-sighted, all of it. Some of it stung because it hit closer than I expected. Some of it I still don't agree with. What I didn't do was suddenly flip and pretend I was wrong about everything. I sat with it. I spoke to my ex again. I told him very clearly that I never asked him to cancel the trip entirely. I told him that from the start. I said I wanted the girls home that week because this was a major life moment for me and I wanted their support and presence around it. I wasn't asking them to plan the wedding or be my emotional crutch every hour of the day. I wanted them in the house, part of the transition, not gone. He told me it didn't matter what my intent was because from the girls' perspective, the outcome was the same. No trip. He said he wasn't moving it. If it couldn't happen that week, then he wasn't doing it at all. He said he simply couldn't change the dates. I didn't ask him to cancel it. He chose to. I want that clear. He told the girls the trip was off because your mom wouldn't allow it. That phrasing was deliberate. I didn't correct it publicly. I didn't sit them down and counter every word. At that point, everything felt fragile enough already. The older one stopped engaging completely. She stayed in her room, packed her things, and made it clear she would have gone if she could. She said very little, but what she did say stuck. That I wanted them around, not because I cared about them, but because I wanted help and validation for something they weren't even invited to. I told her that wasn't true. She didn't argue. She just didn't believe me. The younger one stayed home technically. Emotionally, she checked out. She followed her sister's lead in silence rather than anger. She started spending more time on her phone, more time out of the house, and more time asking when she could go stay with her dad for a bit. About a week before the wedding, there was a fight. My 14-year-old told me she felt like I cared more about this wedding than about how they were actually doing. She asked me why I needed their support if I already had a fiancé and friends and family backing me up. She asked what would have happened if they had gone. Would I really have fallen apart? I didn't have a clean answer. I told her it mattered to me. I told her I wanted my daughters around for something important in my life. She said it didn't feel important to them the way it did to me. That conversation ended badly. We both walked away upset. I didn't chase it down because at that point everything was already scheduled, paid for, and locked in. The wedding happened. My husband was fully supportive of me through all of this. He agreed with my position. He felt that asking the girls to be present during a major transition wasn't unreasonable. He didn't push me to change my mind. He didn't suggest compromises I hadn't already considered. He stood with me, which mattered in the moment. The day itself went exactly as planned. Smooth, calm, no disasters. I won't pretend otherwise. I enjoyed my wedding. I was focused on it. I didn't spend the day spiraling about what was happening at home. I let myself have the day. The girls weren't there. That absence was noticeable but not disruptive. It sat quietly in the background. After the wedding, the dynamic at home didn't reset. If anything, it solidified. The older one stayed distant. The younger one became more withdrawn. She didn't lash out, but she also didn't lean in. She asked more than once if she could go stay with her dad for longer stretches. I didn't say no, but I also didn't encourage it. I'm aware of how that looks. Now, we're about to leave for our honeymoon. This is the part I've been struggling with the most and the reason I'm writing again. I'm going on a vacation I planned, paid for, and looked forward to. It's not extravagant, but it's intentional. It's something I wanted, and I'm allowed to want it. I know that logically at the same time, I can't ignore the imbalance. My daughter's trip was canceled, and I still got my wedding. And now I get this. I've had people tell me those things aren't comparable. A honeymoon isn't the same as an NYC trip. A wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Teen vacations can happen anytime. I understand that argument. I've used it myself. But I also understand how it looks through their eyes. I asked them to give something up for my moment. I didn't give anything up in return. My husband has been very clear that he doesn't see this as something we need to fix by centering the girls over our marriage. He doesn't mistreat them. He doesn't interfere. But he also doesn't see his role as repairing a relationship he didn't damage. He believes the girl's relationship with me is separate from our marriage and that constantly bending around their reactions will only create more resentment in the long run. That perspective makes sense to me in theory. In practice, I'm living with the consequences. The older one has made it clear she plans to spend more time at her dad's once school schedules allow. I haven't tried to stop her. The younger one hasn't said that outright, but I can see the pull. She doesn't want to leave, but she also doesn't want to stay in a house. I'm stuck between roles. I'm a wife now. I can't pretend that doesn't come with its own priorities. I also can't pretend I don't see what this has done to my relationship with my daughters. I don't regret getting married. I don't regret wanting my daughter's support. I do regret how rigid everything became once lines were drawn. Even if I didn't draw all of them, I'm not looking for validation. In this time, I'm trying to understand whether this was an unavoidable fracture or a preventable one that I misjudged. That's where things stand as we get ready to leave. I'm still asking the same question even if the answer is harder to hear now. Ada comments comment 1. I'm going to give you this. Your ex is absolutely being petty and strategic. The "your mom wouldn't allow it" phrasing is calculated. He wanted to be the fun parent and you to be the wall. That's textbook. But here's the problem. You handed him the bricks. You're so focused on intent. I didn't want him to cancel it that you're ignoring impact. Teens don't live in intent. They live in what happened. Their dad offered a rare trip. You said no. They lost the trip. The details of custody negotiation or PTO reality don't matter to them. They just know who said no. And the child-free wedding is still a giant unspoken thing. You're acting like you wanted them around as family, but you didn't want them at the actual event. So what are they to you in that weak family or support staff? Because their takeaway is we're included for the boring stuff and excluded for the important stuff. You can deny that's what you meant, but that's what it feels like from the kid's side. Your husband's "not my job" attitude is a red flag too. Not because he has to parent them, but because you're clearly drifting into a household where your kids are a separate compartment you handle alone. That creates a wedge over time. You're already seeing it. Your ex sucks, but you still made the choice that hurt your kids. Both can be true. And if you keep treating this like an unavoidable fracture instead of a predictable consequence, you're going to lose the younger one too. Comment 2. Uda ta. Because you turned something flexible into a test, and kids always fail those. You could have handled this in about 10 other ways. You could have let them go and planned a separate intentional moment with them around the wedding. You could have invited them to the ceremony. You could have owned your feelings instead of framing them as expectations. You didn't. You chose the one path that made it about who gets to decide. And I don't buy that this was about presence alone. You say you didn't need help, but you absolutely needed reassurance. You wanted to feel like your kids weren't drifting as you started a new marriage. That's understandable, but it's not their job to fix. Your ex didn't help, but he didn't create this dynamic. He just exploited it. The real damage came from you refusing to let the situation be imperfect. You wanted it your way because it was your moment. Now your daughters are choosing their father and you're about to go on a honeymoon wondering why everything feels hollow. This didn't have to be a catastrophe. It became one because you treated flexibility like weakness and control like stability. Comment 3. Uda. And I think the reason this blew up is because you're pretending there wasn't a hierarchy choice made when there absolutely was. You picked an order of importance. Wedding, then marriage, then honeymoon, then kids want. That's not automatically evil, but it is a choice. And your daughters felt it immediately, especially the younger one. She didn't explode because she's still hoping you'll pick her sometimes. That's actually the sadder reaction. You keep saying you didn't want the trip canned, but you also say you wouldn't budge on the week. That's like blocking the only exit and then saying, "I didn't tell you to stop walking." Functionally, the same result. Teens don't parse nuance like adults do. And honestly, neither do most adults when emotions are involved. What really concerns me is how comfortable you sound with your husband's position that this isn't his problem. Once you married him, your kids became part of the household ecosystem, whether he likes it or not. He doesn't have to be dad. But total disengagement is how resentment grows quietly. You're already standing in it. You didn't just ask for support, you demanded alignment. They didn't give it. Now you're surprised the relationship feels colder. Update. The honeymoon was objectively great. It was calm and planned, exactly what we needed after months of stress. I slept well for the first time in a long while. I didn't wake up bracing myself for tension. I didn't feel pulled in 10 directions. For that stretch of time, I felt settled and supported in a way I hadn't in years. That's part of the problem. While we were away, my husband handled communication with my ex. That was a joint decision. I was drained and emotionally worn down, and I didn't want to be the constant mediator anymore. My husband framed it as stepping up, taking pressure off me, and letting me focus on us. I agreed. He spoke to my ex directly and somehow managed to get both girls back to the house after the honeymoon. I wasn't on those calls. I didn't hear the wording. I just knew the outcome. When we returned, both girls were there. They were quiet. They kept to themselves, answered questions briefly, and spent most of their time in their rooms or out of the house. I told myself this was normal after everything that had happened. I also told myself it was good they were home. My husband was relieved. He said this proved that firm communication worked and that things would settle if we stayed consistent. I let him take the lead. He believed the house needed clearer expectations, set meal times, chores that were written down instead of loosely implied, limits on last-minute plans. He was calm, direct, and unwavering. I told myself this was stability. The girls didn't push back openly. The 14-year-old complied without comment. The 16-year-old complied mechanically. There was no warmth in it, but no explosion either. My husband took that as a good sign. Around this time, we started talking about having a baby. It wasn't sudden, but it was more serious than hypothetical. My husband wanted to plan. He wanted the house to run smoothly before adding anything else to it. That's when things shifted in a way I didn't fully register until later. He suggested dividing responsibilities more clearly. He said the girls were old enough to contribute in a meaningful way and that it would prepare them for adulthood. He asked the older one to handle cooking in the mornings and at night. The younger one was assigned cleaning duties beyond just her room. I didn't object. I told myself this wasn't exploitation. Families help each other. I grew up doing chores. The difference which I see now is that this wasn't framed as shared responsibility. It was framed as expectation. Social plans started getting cut short or denied not as punishment but because they interfered with schedules. My husband believed consistency mattered more than flexibility. He said too much leniency earlier had caused the current issues. I went along with it. The 16-year-old started pulling away more noticeably. She stopped eating meals with us. She stayed out longer. When confronted, she wasn't defiant. She was distant in a way that felt deliberate. Eventually, she asked to stay with her dad again. She said it made things easier. I didn't fight it the way I should have. I told myself forcing her to stay would make things worse. My husband said it might be for the best if she needed space. He framed it as her choice, not ours. She left again. The house became quieter. I told myself this was a phase. The 14-year-old stayed. Physically, emotionally, she receded. She did what was asked. She didn't complain. She also stopped sharing anything personal. School was fine. Friends were good. Her answers were rehearsed. I started noticing small things. Then how my husband spoke about the girls when they weren't around. Not cruelly but dismissively. How he referred to their dad as a negative influence every time there was friction. How he framed their reactions as immaturity rather than responses. I also started noticing how often decisions were made without me being part of the conversation anymore. Rules communicated, schedules enforced, consequences delivered, all under the idea that I needed rest, space, and recovery after everything I'd been through. And that part is true. I was exhausted. I did need a break. But I'm starting to understand that stepping back doesn't mean stepping out. There's something else I need to clear up because I've seen speculation before. There was no affair. I didn't cheat on my ex with my now husband. Our relationship began after my marriage ended. Feelings existed before paperwork was finalized. Yes, but boundaries were not crossed. I won't accept being rewritten as someone who betrayed one partner for another. That's not what happened here. I don't think my husband set out to isolate my kids. I don't think he's intentionally cruel. But I'm seeing a pattern of control justified as order and distance, justified as independence. I'm still happy in my marriage. That's the part that makes this uncomfortable to admit. I feel loved. I feel chosen. I feel like I have a partner who shows up for me. Those things are real. At the same time, I'm starting to regret some of the authority I handed over without questioning. Canceling social plans, turning chores into obligations that carried emotional weight, letting my older daughter leave without pushing back harder. I don't think I neglected my children. I think I prioritized my role temporarily because I was depleted and trusted that things would stabilize. Now, I'm not so sure. I see enough damage to be concerned, but not enough to fully understand how to fix it. I don't want to blow up my marriage. I don't want to pretend nothing is wrong. I don't want to wake up years from now and realize my daughters learned that my happiness required their disappearance. I don't have a neat ending here. I have questions I avoided before and a growing sense that stepping back cost more than I anticipated. That's where I am now. Comments. Comment 1. Why Tia? You're watching the train hit and calling it weather. This update is wild because you're almost seeing it and then you duck at the last second. I don't think he's intentionally isolating them. Girl, he doesn't have to be twirling a mustache for the outcome to be isolation. Let's list what happened once you let him take the wheel. He negotiated with your ex without you present. He imposed house rules your kids didn't consent to. He started canceling their social plans. He assigned them labor roles. One cooks, one cleans. Your 16-year-old left again. Your 14-year-old turned into a polite ghost. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a system working exactly as designed. Less noise, less inconvenience, less teen drama in his home, and you're still centering how you feel, supported, chosen, rested. You got your wedding, your honeymoon, your calm household. Your daughter's got duties and silence. The saddest part is your 14-year-old. She's not well behaved. She's protecting herself by giving you nothing you can use against her. She's learning that being small and agreeable is safer than being honest. That's a fed-up lesson to teach your kid. You don't need another pattern to confirm. You already have it. The question is whether you're going to keep picking the man who makes your life easier over the children who are quietly walking away because, make no mistake, they're walking away. One just did it with her feet. The other is doing it from inside her bedroom. Comment 2. You're tiptoeing around it, so I'll say it plainly. You traded one domineering dynamic for another. Except this one hides behind rules and consistency instead of raised voices. You keep insisting you didn't neglect your kids, but you absolutely did. Not in the forgot to feed them way, in the emotional, parental way. You handed the steering wheel to a guy who has zero personal stake in your daughter's well-being. And surprise, he didn't center them. He turned your home into a place where compliance is rewarded and called it stability and the chore thing. Come on, oldest cooks, youngest cleans while you and your husband plan for a baby. That's not everyone pitching in. That's parentification with nicer wording. Those girls aren't your built-in help because you're constructing a new life. You don't get to clock out of parenting because you went through a lot. Your daughters went through it too, and they didn't get a honeymoon or a reset. Also, the fact that your husband handled your ex and got the girls back without you even knowing how that conversation went is a massive red flag. You don't even know what was promised or implied about your own children. Your 16-year-old leaving again isn't a phase. It's her opting out of a house where she's treated like a tenant who owes labor. And your 14-year-old will follow once she's old enough to make it stick. You're not a monster, but you're being passive and self-focused in a way that's actively damaging your relationship with your kids. Stop letting your husband run the household like a system that works for him. Step back into being their mother. Update: I lost my marriage, my home, and my relationship with my kids, and I understand why now. I didn't lose everything all at once. It happened gradually, quietly, in ways I justified until I couldn't anymore. Both of my daughters live with their father now. Not temporarily, not as a trial. It became permanent without a dramatic custody battle or a single defining moment. The 16-year-old stayed after leaving the second time. The 14-year-old followed months later. She said she felt calmer there. She didn't accuse me of anything. That almost hurt more. Around the same time, my husband started talking seriously about relocating. He framed it as a fresh start, better opportunities, and less tension. He said the house felt heavy with unresolved conflict and that a clean slate would help us move forward, especially if we were going to keep trying for a baby. I agreed, or at least I didn't object. By then, I was used to letting him set direction. We moved to a smaller place closer to his work. I told myself this was just a phase and that I'd rebuild my relationship with my girls once things settled. They didn't settle. Once the kids were gone, the parts of my marriage I'd ignored became impossible to miss. The calm I thought I had came with conditions. Decisions about money slowly stopped being conversations. He suggested combining accounts for simplicity, then took over paying bills because he was better with numbers. I still worked, but my access narrowed without me noticing the exact moment it happened. He questioned purchases. He discouraged trips to see friends. He framed it as budgeting, planning, and responsibility. When I pushed back, he reminded me how unstable everything had been before he stepped in. He talked about how much he'd done for me. I believed him. The isolation crept in the same way. Not through outright bans, but through discouragement. People were bad influences. My family didn't respect boundaries. My daughter's distance was proof that I needed to focus on my marriage instead of chasing approval that would never come. The fight that ended everything wasn't loud. It was ugly in a quiet way. I found messages on his phone by accident. Not one woman. Several, some emotional, some explicit, ongoing. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He told me I'd been distant, that I'd changed, that he'd carried me through chaos and deserved understanding. Something broke. Then I just stopped arguing. I filed for divorce shortly after. I reached out to my daughters during that time, not to ask for sympathy, but to let them know what was happening. The older one didn't respond. The younger one sent a brief message saying she was sorry I was going through it, but she needed space. I didn't get comfort from them, and I didn't deserve to. That realization came later after the dust settled and I was alone in an apartment I could barely afford, rebuilding credit and relearning how to make decisions without asking permission. Looking back, I can name what happened clearly now. My ex-husband was abusive in ways that didn't look like abuse while I was inside it. He controlled through reason, through what's best, through appearing calm while narrowing my world. He didn't invent my mistakes, but he exploited them, and I let him. I chose comfort when I should have chosen confrontation. I chose peace in my marriage over discomfort with my daughters. I told myself I was tired, that I deserved rest, and that things would balance out later. They didn't. The moment that really crystallized it for me wasn't the divorce or the financial fallout. It was a holiday that passed without a call. That's when I understood that the loss wasn't dramatic enough to demand attention, but final enough to matter. I'm rebuilding now slowly. Therapy, work, learning how to sit with guilt without turning it into self-pity. I don't call my daughters unless invited. I respond when they reach out. I don't defend myself anymore. I don't explain. I listen. I'm not writing this for absolution. I'm writing it because I finally understand that losing everything didn't start with my wedding or the trip or the honeymoon. It started when I decided my discomfort mattered more than my daughter's trust. I don't know what my relationship with them will look like in the future. I hope there's one. I'm prepared for the possibility that there won't be. All I can do now is own what I did and live differently going forward. That's the end of my story. Second story. I thought I was on mute and said, "Get to the point" to my boss in an online office meeting. The whole team listened. Now I'm planning a fake death and going to do farming. This happened 2 hours ago and I'm still hiding under my blanket. I was in a massive all-hands meeting, about 40 people for a project launch. Usually I keep my mic hard muted on my headset, but today I was eating lunch, so I was double muted, software mute plus headset mute. Or so I thought. About 45 minutes in, the project manager was explaining a delay in the timeline. I, thinking I was safe in my cocoon of silence, let out a very loud, very deep sigh and muttered, "Oh my God, just get to the point. Nobody cares." The audio didn't just pick it up because of the way Team Zoom prioritizes active speakers. My face popped up on the main screen for a split second. The silence was deafening. The PM paused for a solid 5 seconds. Nobody said anything. He just continued. I slowly reached up and tapped my headset. It beeped. Mute on. It had been off the whole time. I have not checked my Slack messages. I am considering faking my own death and moving to a farm. TLDDR. Thought I was double muted during a major stakeholder meeting. Accidentally sighed and told the PM to get to the point in front of 40 people. Now I am afraid to open Slack. Update. First of all, thank you to everyone who suggested I fake my own death and move to a farm. I spent last night looking up potato farming tutorials on YouTube, but unfortunately I have a mortgage, so I had to log in this morning. I promised an update. So, here is the damage report. I logged in at 8:59 a.m. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. I hovered over the Slack icon for a solid minute before clicking it. 12 unread messages. Most were from my work friends sending skull emojis and gifs of people digging graves. But there it was. A direct message from the PM himself sent at 4:30 p.m. yesterday. The message: "Hey, my name. Do you have 5 minutes for a quick sync before stand-up?" I almost threw up. Quick sync is corporate speak for execution. I joined the call. No video. I wasn't ready for him to see the fear in my eyes. He joined. Silence for 3 seconds. Then he laughed. A dry, tired laugh, he said. So yesterday, I immediately started apologizing. I unleashed a word salad of technical difficulties. Bad day, audio glitch, and I'm so sorry. He cut me off. Look, honestly, you weren't wrong. I realized after the meeting that I spent 20 minutes explaining a 2-minute delay. I tend to ramble when I'm stressed about deadlines. I stopped breathing. Was this a trap? He continued. However, let's maybe keep the commentary to the internal monologue next time. My boss was on that call. He thinks it was unprofessional, but I told him you were just frustrated with the audio issues. You owe me one. The result: I am not fired. I am, however, officially the mute guy. During the stand-up meeting today, when I joined, another coworker typed in the chat, "Careful everyone, the truth teller is here." I have taped a physical piece of cardboard over my mute button. I am never speaking again. TL Doctor. Finally opened Slack. The PM admitted he was rambling, but saved my R's with his boss. I am now the office legend who said what everyone was thinking. But I will likely die of embarrassment before the project launches. Comments. Commenter 1. If this is real, don't leave this job because you have a good manager that stood up for you when he didn't need to. Buy that dude a Christmas gift. OP. Yes, he is really a good manager. And also, it's my first year in this job. Commenter 2. I realized early on with Zoom calls, you have to pay close attention to the settings. I've been on a few where people were inadvertently half naked or they started to scream at their relatives without their mics being muted. So crap happens. OP, you're right. Now I learned from my fault. Update. It has been 2 days since I taped a piece of cardboard over my mute button. I genuinely thought if I just kept my mouth shut, The truth teller jokes would die out by Friday and I could go back to being invisible. I was wrong. I just checked my calendar and saw an invite for a Q4 strategy review on Thursday. Host the department head, the big boss who heard me sigh. Attendees, the senior leads, the PM, and me. I immediately panic messaged my PM, the one I told to get to the point yesterday, asking if this was a mistake. He replied, "No mistake. Big boss liked your honesty about the timeline delay yesterday. He thinks the rest of the team is too polite to give bad news. He wants you there to call out the BS. You guys don't understand. I am not a straight shooter. I am just an anxious introvert who was hungry and wanted to eat his sandwich in peace. I don't know anything about Q4 strategy. I just want to write code and hide. Now I've been drafted as the corporate vibe checker. If I stay silent, I fail the big boss. If I speak, I might actually get fired this time. Currently Googling how to sound smart without being mean and considering faking a microphone driver failure. TLDDR. My accidental insult was interpreted as leadership potential. Now the big boss wants me to sit in strategy meetings to roast people. I am unqualified for this comments. Commenter 1. My God, you're George Costanza. Tip. If you act annoyed, people will think you're busy and leave you alone. It was incredible, Jerry. In one brief shining moment of exasperation, I launched a career. And yet you never got your sandwich. No sandwich? OP. The problem is it worked too well. I acted annoyed and they mistook it for executive vision. Now I can't turn it off or they'll think I stopped working. Commenter 2. My dream job. Just fail upwards, bro. OP. Task failed successfully. Commenter 3. Seems like an opportunity. Take it. Sure, it might take you out of your comfort zone, but that's okay. You've been given permission to speak up, but you'll probably use that privilege more wisely, and you'll be more listened to than someone who is a natural born straight shooter. Listen to the rest of your team and be a voice and advocate for them. Oh, I'm going to try my best. It's definitely way out of my comfort zone, but maybe I can turn accidentally rude into constructively honest. Wish me luck, OP, on a lesson he learned. OP. If it makes you feel any better. The lesson I learned today is that audible frustration apparently gets you further than actual competence. Corporate life is a joke. Commenter 3. Say yes and deal with it later. Sounds like they've got your back. Observe and give feedback. You got this, mute guy. OP. That is basically my life motto right now. Say yes, panic later. Thanks for the hype. I'm going to need it. Update to the people in the comments saying, my life has turned into a bad sitcom. Writing prompt. I agree. I honestly wish this was fake because then I could have written a cool ending where I become CEO or get fired in a blaze of glory. Reality is much more boring and sweaty. I attended the Q4 strategy review an hour ago. I spent the first 20 minutes staring at my mute button like it was a bomb detonator. I double-checked it. I checked the software mute. I checked the hardware mute. I didn't drink water. I didn't breathe too loudly. When the department head big boss finally asked for my candid opinion on the timeline, the room went silent. This was it. The truth teller moment everyone was joking about. I panicked. I didn't roast anyone. I didn't save the company. I didn't verify the loud American theory. I cleared my throat and said, I think if we focus on the Q3 blockers first, the timeline is optimistic, but doable. That's it. That's all I said. The big boss nodded and said, good point. Let's move on. No applause. No laughter. The meeting continued for another 45 minutes of boring PowerPoint slides. The legend of the truth teller died right there in that Microsoft Teams room because I was too scared to actually be bold. My PM messaged me after. You went easy on them. I replied, I just want to write code, man. So, I am officially retiring the mute guy persona. I am taking the cardboard off my headset, but I am keeping the trust issues forever. Back to work. TLDDR went to the scary meeting. Was too terrified to be the truth teller. Gave a boring safe answer. The nickname is dead. I am going back to being an invisible developer. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your